So my name is Tina. I'm a set designer and installation artist, and I run a design studio called Space Objects, and we work on installations both in the commercial and private sectors. That can be anything from activations for brands, it can be sets for film productions, it can also be immersive experiences for public art events. I am the principal designer at Space Objects. My partner Ash is the production director. So a typical workflow for me would involve getting a brief or a project scope from a client. So we will take that as a first step, and then we will look into the ideation phase. It's broken down into 4 phases. Phase 1 is really kind of understanding and developing mood boards. We'll send it over to whoever we're working with, and then we will kind of develop that dialogue to understand whether we're on the same page and aligned or not. Once we're aligned on those images, we then start the ideation phase 2. So those are all the sketches we start to build and draw and develop based on images we found in phase 1. Once we've signed it off, we move on to phase 3. Those are all the architectural renderings, the fly-throughs, a lot more detailed images and drawings about fixtures and finishes. Phase 4, then all the technical drawings, and all the technical drawings are essentially the blueprints for the installations to be able to be fabricated by the builders that we work with. So my influences range from various sources. It's from travel, mainly. Copenhagen for me is a place where I grew up, so I was influenced by the design culture there, which is very prominent throughout the city and throughout the way of living. I am very influenced by the minimalistic approach to design in terms of the clean lines, the clean silhouettes, form especially. In terms of color, I'd probably say those influences come from the UK, just like the vibrant splashes of color that the city already has. That's what I would say are my main influences. I am all about collaboration. I do believe that the more that we collaborate, the stronger the execution of the work will be in the end product. I love working with creatives and non-creatives for different types of experiences. One of the collaborators that I work with, he is an engineer, and he was able to develop a software for us to create a sensor to print also water on a swing we did for Ultra Music Festival for DBS some years ago. So that was pretty cool. So in terms of the ideal collaboration, I'd love to work with a material scientist or specialist to be able to work with different materials that we don't usually work with. One of my more memorable projects I've worked on would be the Gucci installation that I did for Gucci here in Singapore. And what I really liked about it is it was the complete opposite of what my style used to be, which is more like minimalist approach. This was all about maximalism. It started off with a box with some arches. The arches were inspired by the fashion shows that were done in Italy, that kind of like Italian goth architecture. Gucci Gothic really was a great experience for me in terms of the materiality we were able to work with, the quality materials, and kind of the detailing. There were actually about 3,000 separate pieces cut that were installed on that. So I'd probably say that's one of my more memorable ones because there was so much detailing finesse that went into it. I originally wanted to study art. However, Mom and Dad wouldn't support me studying fine art or art because they didn't see it as a credible career path to take. What I ended up doing was I ended up studying interior design. I was doing that for a long time, probably a decade, and I just did not feel content with getting that fix I was looking for. I ended up quitting. I'm a very sporadic person. So I actually started just messaging people that I had been out with or met here in Singapore, and the opportunity at Zook came up. I got the job, and that's where it started. Design and art do intersect. With design, typically you're solving creative problems that could be related to functionality. You know, for instance, in interior design, it could be how do people move through space? How do they interact with the environment? These are things that you would address in that design process within design, I feel. With art, I'd say you dive deep into a narrative. It's about expressing, for me, an experience and how you potentially view a space in a different way. Concepts, aesthetics, and functionality, they all go hand in hand, and there needs to be a fine balance between all of those elements. There is a process in our design where we go through several different types of iterations to ensure that we hit all those targets or all these kind of key elements. For what we do, it's really important that safety is met because we have audiences interact with the work. So safety is number one. Number two, I'd say, is aesthetics, right? Aesthetics come into play because we're trying to attract the audience into the work. So aesthetics is form, it's color, it's like how does it sit in its environment? How does it look from a distance? We don't just plop in something we've created into the space. It really needs to have that like synergy between overall elevation view, top view, side view, and really just work within that environment itself. Harmony is a good example where the site has a great juxtaposition between the work itself, because it's open air, it's on the beach, with the sun shining onto the surface of the skin of the structure. It starts to kind of have different hues to it depending on where you're standing. And as the sun sets as well, it completely transforms. But behind the work, you have the ocean view, and sets between like these palm trees that stand tall next to it. So that's a good example of how sight works really well with the work. If you were to put harmony in a different location, like Orchard Road or an HDB block void deck, it would look very different. So sight is very important. I definitely take the digital space into consideration. For me, creating work is about seeing the perspective through the audience's eyes. And that is how I see the work through the lens, through social media. It's through their hashtags, it's through their locations. And that is a good way for me to understand how to modify the work for future experiences. It's interesting to see how different types of audiences use the work. Some is for social media, some is for creative projects, for shoots, others is, for wedding shoots. It's interesting. It's a gratifying feeling to observe the audiences through the work. The wows, the oohs, the ahs, the selfie sticks. It's a nice feeling, which is also why we do it. For us, it's really kind of like, how do we evoke that sense of emotion? And that's their way of communicating that. I really just want to make art accessible to everybody. For me, art is not about a painting sitting in a gallery. Art has so many different layers to it. There's a way that I would love to just be able to make it all-inclusive to everybody, not just sitting in a gallery, but to the everyday person that's walking by a piece of work. If I get the opportunity just to kind of shift that mindset in how they look at a space or look at an experience, then I feel like my job has been done.